Welcome back to the beauty of becoming. It's been a minute. I've missed y'all so much, and I'm just excited to be back recording season 2. It's gonna be such a great season, and I had every intention of recording this season right after ending season 1, but the Lord had other plans. And I feel like really I've been living out the things that I'm going to be sharing on this season, and it's going to be so much more impactful and beneficial because they're just things that the Lord's been showing me and revealing to me and doing in my heart that I think isn't just for me, but it's for what he's doing in this time and what he's doing in his people and in his daughters. And so I'm just really excited to be able to share that with you. I'm sorry it's been so long since I've been on here, but I believe season 2, there'll be some dividends for the delay, as they say. So thank you so much for tuning in today. As I'm recording some of these episodes, I'm going to be giving some life updates of what's been happening during this time. And today is one of those episodes. Since the last time I recorded an episode, I am now a house owner. I own a home, and it's crazy. I don't know who let this happen or why anyone thinks I'm adult enough to own a home, but I do, and I love it, and I'm so excited. But the reason I want to share this testimony with you is because if there's something that right now you're believing for in faith, or maybe it's something that you've given up on believing for in faith because it's been such a long waiting season, I want to share this because I believe it's going to be encouraging for you. And so if you've ever wondered, does God really care about the things I care about? Or taking it even further, does he care about them to the extent that I care about them? I hope that today's episode will give you that reassurance that yes, he sees you. Yes, he knows the desires of your heart that he's put there. And he's so intentional that when we trust his plan, when we walk in his timing, that he's going to work out every single detail. So I don't know about you. I don't know if this is just a me thing or if it's like a single person thing or what. But one of the most difficult transitions for me in becoming an adult, but like not being married this entire time and really not being in a relationship most of the time either. One of the most difficult things has just been feeling like I haven't had like a life of my own. In a sense, like I haven't had things that were just like, all right, here's the line, like this is obviously like my spouse or my kids or, for a while, like my apartment or my home. Like I didn't have those things that like clearly defined, hey, this is me and the life that I'm building. And I'm really grateful that like during this time I've had amazing family and friends who have just really like let me be a part of their lives and just include me in things and invite me to holiday things and the family that I've like lived with, and I'm just so grateful, and I want to like make sure that's reiterated that I am so grateful that I've been included in so many things. But there has always been this desire of my heart that I also just like want something that's mine too. That's my family that I'm growing, or like my home that I'm building with someone. So in the midst of like being grateful for everyone that's loved me so well and included me, it's like I've had this prayer really that I could tell you where I was when I began praying it, but I was just like, Lord, I just want something of my own. I want just a life that's like, this is mine. This is what I'm building. This is what I'm creating. This is what I'm doing. And I felt the Lord really begin to start answering that. I think when I got my first apartment, I think is kind of when I felt like, okay, this is mine. Like this is something, I can't necessarily like renovate, or I gotta be careful of how many holes I'm putting in the wall and stuff like that. But it was, man, when I moved into that first apartment, it was such a beautiful season of just being like me and the Lord. And it was a struggle because it like, I'm a social person. I mean, not like a complete extrovert, but it is hard like living by yourself in the complete silence. I didn't have a roommate and it was like 2020 time, but I felt like the Lord started answering that with my first apartment. And that's a whole testimony too. I actually think I'm going to put in another episode of how I got the apartment and how that worked out, but another time. So after living there a couple of years, I got a promotion at work and ended up moving closer to where my job is based out of. So about a month or two before I moved into my new apartment, I went on a hike with my cousin, who we call Aunt Mickey, and we're just talking about life stuff, catching up. And she was like, "Hey, I have some friends. It's a great Christian couple. They're talking about putting their house on the market in like a year or two. And your name came to mind, and I wanted to ask if you'd be okay with me just letting them know that you might be interested in this house." And she like described it and the location and stuff, and she was like, "I think it'd be a perfect starter home for you." So I was like, "Yeah, that's fine," because it was like, a few years off anyways. So I'm like, "Yeah, that's cool." Didn't think much after that. So then I moved into my new apartment, and I was there for about a year and a half. I got to live next door to two amazing gals. Shout out to Chloe and Maddie if you're listening. We called ourselves the Building B board of directors. And we always had a pulse on what was going on there. But that was just like another beautiful time with the Lord, and it was like a new experience moving into a new town and like all these things. I lived there for about a year and a half, and it was one of those things, like, again, where I was like super grateful for where the Lord had brought me and things. But I just told the Lord, because I always, at the beginning of the year, I like to pray into the new year, like probably everyone else watching this. It's nothing special, but I was just praying into the new year, and I was like, "Lord, I'm so grateful for this place. It's beautiful, next door to amazing ladies, friends. Loved the town, but I was like, I really want a place of my own. Like, I want a home. I don't want to sign another lease on an apartment." And so like this year, if we could do that before my lease is up, like that'd be great. And that was really the prayer. It wasn't anything elaborate. Like, I wasn't fasting and travailing, because honestly, it felt like a pipe dream, because I'm like, I don't have the 20% saved, that people recommend that you do. And I had good credit, but I had never like checked into getting pre-approved, or, like it just seemed honestly like a Red Sea kind of request. Like, "Can you part the Red Sea for me?" Cool, thanks. And then I just like go about my day. So that's the equivalent of what it was. So just kind of, prayed it, went about my day. And that week I just had this like real urgency in my heart that it was like, I need to reach out to Pastor Andrew and just like schedule a call and talk to him. And it wasn't about really anything specific, but it just like for a couple of days, it was like nagging at me. And I was like, okay, I need to text him. And if y'all remember, he was, I believe, my first guest for season 1. We scheduled the call for like the following weekend. And at the time, I was reading Mere Christianity by C.S. Lewis, and I came across what is now my favorite quote of his, which I don't know a ton of quotes of his, but out of the ones I've read, I'm like, this is it. I love this. And so I want to read it to you, because all of the details I'm sharing with you are going to be important as I go through the story. So just putting that out there. So this is what the quote says. "Imagine yourself as a living house. God comes in to rebuild that house. At first, perhaps you can understand what he's doing. He's getting the drains right and stopping leaks in the roof and so on. You knew that those jobs needed doing, and so you are not surprised. But presently, he starts knocking the house about in a way that hurts abominably and does not seem to make any sense. What on earth is he up to? The explanation is that he's building quite a different house from the one you thought of. Throwing out a new wing here, putting on an extra floor there, running up towers, making courtyards. You thought you were being made into a decent little cottage, but he is building a palace. He intends to come and live in it himself. And this was such such a metaphor for what the Lord was literally like doing in my life at that time, just spiritually and emotionally. I wasn't even thinking, like, I had prayed that prayer about, God, could you get me a house? And then forgot about it, honestly, like, didn't think much of it. But what the Lord was doing in me, just like emotionally and spiritually, this gave me language for that, because I'm like, man, I thought we like dealt with the things that we needed to deal with, but then the Lord's highlighting all of these things that I didn't realize were like unhealed or undealt with in me. So when I read this quote, I'm like, that's what God's doing. I was prepared to be this little cottage that, was good enough to get by. But the Lord's like, no, I want to make you into a palace that I intend to live in myself. So fast forward to the weekend, talking to Pastor Andrew, and we're catching up. And at the end of our phone calls, he always asks to pray for me. And I'm always like, heck yeah. Like, I want all your prayers. So he starts praying, and I hadn't told him about the C.S. Lewis quote. I hadn't told him about the house prayer, anything. So just to give you context of how crazy it is that he starts saying this stuff. So he starts using language that back at the beginning when I told you that I was praying, like, God, I just want a life of my own. I want something that's mine. He literally starts using that language, and he starts saying that, like, I just feel like the Lord's saying, God is bringing you into a place of giving you your own life. And I hadn't like shared that prayer with anyone ever. It was just a recurring thing that I had prayed. So that caught my attention. Then, I hadn't mentioned anything about the C.S. Lewis quote, and he says, and the Lord's giving me this picture that he's like building you this house, and he's going to bring you into this house, and it's filled with all of the treasures that he knows are exactly what you've desired. And it's like he's showing you each room, and he's decorated each room just like he knows you would like it. And as he opens each room, it reveals like this treasure, this heart's desire that you've prayed for. And he's just really excited to show this to you. And I was like blown away, because I'm like, okay, you gotta hear what's going on. And it wasn't even crossing my mind on a physical house. I was just like, let me send you the C.S. Lewis quote. This is what I feel the Lord is doing in my life, spiritually and emotionally. And so it was just like a really, really big encouragement. So the following weekend, so it's all about like late January at this point, I prayed about the house stuff beginning of January. Now it's about late January. And I go next door to my friend Chloe's apartment, and her and Maddie and I were all hanging out. And Chloe mentioned that she's like, yeah, I was talking to my parents today, and they have some friends who are selling a house. Like, Whitney, I didn't even think, would you be interested in looking at it? And I was like, yeah, like, tell me more about it. So we're talking, and as she's describing this house, I'm like, wait a second, this sounds really familiar. And all of a sudden, the hike that I went on with my Aunt Vicky, and she was telling me these things, I'm like, what are their names? And so Chloe calls her mom and finds out the information, and I text my Aunt Vicky, and I'm like, hey, are these the friends you were telling me about? And she's like, yeah, they're getting ready to put their house on the market. You should reach out and let her know if you want to look at it. So literally, Chloe and her mom are talking, and Chloe's like, let him know she wants to look at it. And then I'm texting Aunt Vicky, and Aunt Vicky's calling the sellers like, hey, my niece is wanting to look. So these poor sellers are getting bombarded with people who, like, I had no idea that both sets of people knew this couple. You know what I mean? Like, crazy how that worked out. So set up a time to go and look at the house, and decided, well, I should see, first of all, if I could buy it. Like, I had some money saved up, but I'm like, should probably go get pre-approved. So I'm telling my coworkers about it, and one of my coworkers was like, hey, I have a great loan officer that we used for when we bought our first home. here's his name and information. So I'm like, cool. So I go and, you know, contact him. He emails me back. And when I saw the name of the bank, I was like, of course, like, why wouldn't it be? But the name is Cadence Bank. And the reason that's very significant is because my sister and I actually wrote a song called Cadence. It's on our second album, A Portrait of Worship. Alicia and Whitney, if you want to look us up on Spotify, Apple Music. So, yeah, and that word just like that was a whole season that the Lord was teaching us what his cadence is in our lives and how to stay when he stays and when to know when to move because he's moving and he's working and he's doing. So when I saw the name Cadence, I was like, okay, this feels like confirmation as well. So it got pre-approved. Long story short, it took I told the sellers I wanted the house. It took them a couple months to find a house with all the things that they were like looking for. And by May 1st, I signed the papers and I bought a house. So crazy to still say, but I am a homeowner. And it was just really just a beautiful process because, like I said, I mean, it's a culmination of two things. It's a culmination of something I've prayed for literally years, right? Like when I didn't have an apartment of my own and when I was just struggling with like, God, I'm so grateful for the life you've given me, but I want some ownership, right? Like I want to build something with you and with another person and build a family and things. It was a culmination of God like answering that. And then it was also like the suddenly of I prayed almost like a Hail Mary type of prayer, you know, in January of like, Lord, I would love not to sign a lease this year. If you could make that happen, I would love to own a home. And then that suddenly of from praying that early January to signing papers on a house May 1st. Crazy. Craziness. But it was interesting because like throughout this process, and I wanted to make sure I mentioned this because I want to normalize that when some really amazing things happen in one area, there can still be some grief that other things haven't happened in other areas. And for me, this looked like I was buying this home, like this amazing, incredible thing was happening that I was so excited to do with the Lord because this was very much like the Lord made this happen. And so I just felt like this was like us, you know, sometimes you're like buying a house with your spouse. And so it feels like you're building that home together. Like I didn't have that. And so it was like, it really has been this beautiful thing that me and the Lord have been doing together. But I realized I started having some like feelings of grief come up and I'm like, all right, what's going on? What is this? And I couldn't put my finger on it. But then one morning I woke up and it was just like, I turned over and I realized I was like, Lord, I'm grieving that I'm doing this alone because I'd always pictured that I would be married when I bought my first home and we would be doing all the updates and the renovations and stuff together. And it'd be a thing that we'd be doing together. And instantly, Holy Spirit was like, you're not doing this alone. And just in my mind, this like reel almost of just like all of the people who, man, like I could not have done this without the help of all of my family and friends that literally helped make this happen, whether it was like recommending loan officers or inspectors to like me asking, you know, my stepdad and brother-in-law questions about contract stuff. And literally one of the things I didn't mention, but I will probably do an episode on is I took a mission trip to Brazil during this process, which was insane. But it's holy the Lord. And so while I'm in Brazil, like my sister and my friend Casey and her fiance, Andrew, my granny, like all sneak into my house, break and enter. Break in and enter. But I gave my sister a key, so it's okay. But they like all the walls I didn't get primed before I left for Brazil. They primed all of them and took down wallpaper. And I had a friend that threw me a housewarming shower. So like literally the Lord was like, baby girl, you are not doing this alone. But just having to like shift my perspective of I always thought it would happen this one way, but that doesn't make the way that it happened any less beautiful or significant. Yeah, it looks different than I expected, but it's still as incredible and as much of a miracle. Just seeing the amazing community people around me help me like was a huge deal. And another really cool testimony from this is my sister and I, like while I was under contract with the house before I purchased it, my sister and I were ministering in Kansas, and our friend Robin was with us. And we were at a Pizza Hut with the pastors of the church that we were ministering at that Sunday morning with Pastor Joseph and Pastor Ashley. And I was telling them about the house, and Pastor Joseph was like, you could just tell he was kind of getting a download, and he was like, this house it's going to be a really good thing. Like I really sense the Lord saying that. And he was like, I even just see you getting things either for free or for really cheap that you wouldn't have gone out, like that you would have wanted, but that you wouldn't have gone out to pay full price for because it's just not possible at the time. But I just see the Lord really blessing you and like just either giving you those things or something really cheap that's in someone's storage unit or, things like that. And so I was just like, all right, Lord, I receive that. And literally as soon as I was like under contract and like bought the house, a lady in the Bible study that I lead, she decided that she was moving to Arizona and was like, I have a house full of stuff. Like, text me with what you're looking for because I might have it and I'll either give it to you or sell it to you for whatever is a good price for you. And I was like, oh my gosh, y'all, I got a sectional that I absolutely love, and just some other furniture. And that was a huge blessing. And then also my coworker moved out of state. And so I got some things for him at like a discounted price. And then honestly, like him and his wife just like gave me some things for free. That was like such a huge blessing. So that was another cool thing that the Lord did during that process. So it was just like cool that, here throughout all of this, like, yeah, I'd prayed for a physical house, but the Lord was doing so much in me emotionally and spiritually that I was like, I thought that's the portion that he had for me, which was great. Like what he was doing was amazing. But for him to then be like, but I actually have a physical house for you too. I was like, what? This blows my mind because I feel like this house process has been a natural representation of what he is doing in me spiritually and emotionally. And part of what God's called me to do is to bring people together and to host. Every time that people have come in, it's already been a place of people just relaxing and their walls coming down and them sharing some like really difficult things that are going on in their lives. And I'm able to pray with people. And so it's just been, it's been a beautiful process because like this house is something between me and the Lord, but it's also, I know, to like bless other people too, whether it's them coming into this home or whether it's me sharing the testimony, because I want to go back to what I talked about in the opening, where I don't know what it is you're believing for. And I don't know what impossibility you're facing right now. And like I said, there are still things in my life where I'm like, God, I feel super discouraged. I'm like almost hopeless in this area. And that I've just been like, Lord, if you can do this amazing thing in my house, like in this area of my house, I know that you can do it in these other things that I'm believing for and contending for. And so I want you to think about, as we close this episode, I want you to think about the desire that the Lord's put inside of you that maybe feels like a long shot, that maybe you even given up on. And I even pray that if there are things that you've forgotten about, that the Lord bring those back to your memory right now. And whenever you have time, whether it's like after this episode or this evening or tomorrow morning or whatever, like pray a prayer of faith. And it can look like it did for me beginning of January, I'm like, Lord, I just would really love a house. I don't know how that could happen, but you can make it happen. It wasn't an elaborate prayer, but the Lord heard it. So, yeah, one, I want to encourage you to just pray a prayer of faith and then just continue to let Him do the work that He's doing in you in this season. And that's something that I've had to really remind myself is that I have the things that the Lord thinks I need right now. Because otherwise, if I needed something else, He would have given it to me. You know, that trust of like, the Lord's given me what He wants me to have in this season. And so, Lord, help me to steward that well and help me to get out of the season everything that You want me to get out of it. And so continue to let Him do that spiritual and emotional work in you of like, you thought you were going to be a cottage, but the Lord wants to make you into a palace that He intends to dwell in Himself. Like, that's incredible. But it's hard, you know, so I don't want to like gloss over it. You know, like when He's tearing down walls and He's building a courtyard and He's building towers and, you know, things like the C.S. Lewis quote says, it's a painful process and it takes a lot of trust because He's the architect that sees the end design and you're just the thing that's getting worked on. You know what I mean? A house doesn't know what it's going to look like, but the designer does, and He knows the end result. And so just let Him continue to do that work and just be faithful in this season that He has you in. And then let Him surprise you with an answer that's greater than you ever could have imagined. And so I just want to pray at the end of this episode over you and whatever it is that you're believing for, because I know it's not easy to be in the place of waiting and to be in the place of like, God, I feel like You've given me this promise, but it's been years. You know, like I said, it's that tension of like, some may hear the story and be like, wow, you prayed a prayer and within like 5 months you got the thing you prayed for. But it's like, yeah, there was a suddenly, but it was preceded by years and years of a heart cry. I'm like, God, I want something of my own. I want to build a life that I can call mine. That's all mine. And with the Lord and with my loved ones, obviously. But before there's a suddenly, there has to be that process of like just contending and following the Lord and believing and not giving up, not losing faith and trusting that He's a good Father that's going to answer. That being said, it's hard in the waiting, and I know that. And so I'm excited to hear of God just like rewarding your faithfulness. And if you have a testimony in the coming weeks or months where you've seen this happen, like please shoot me a message because I want to hear it and celebrate with you. And so I want to pray over you right now. Lord, I just thank You for every woman that's listening to this episode. You, Lord, designed for them to listen to this. You ordered their steps to listen to this episode. And I just pray over them right now, God, encouragement, infuse them with hope. You know, Your word says that hope deferred makes the heart sick. And it's easy for that sickness to turn into hopelessness and bitterness. And that's not the portion that You have for us, God. That's not our inheritance. And so I just ask that You infuse them with hope right now. Holy Spirit, wherever they're at, give them hope, even if it's just a glimmer or just a glimpse of the amazing plans that You have for them. God, I pray that You reveal it to them and that You, Lord, just reward their faithfulness. And even if they're like, well, I haven't been faithful, but I'm choosing to now, God, reward that decision of just choosing to trust You and Your process and the plan that You have. And I just pray, God, that as they continue to be faithful and letting You do that work of turning them into a palace, God, when they were okay with just being a cottage, like You have so much more for them. God, You have even grander things for them than they could even imagine. And I know that's been true in my life, and I know it's true for theirs. And so I just pray that You, Lord, just continue to be faithful to them. And I know that You will, but just continue to be faithful to give them the next step. And even like the little nuggets of encouragement that You gave me with different people over the years, God, I pray that You do that with them as well. And Lord, Help them just to never give up on contending for the beautiful promises that you have for them. And I just pray, God, that you give them just some really significant things in the waiting. God, that they don't miss out on anything that you have for them, and that they get to enjoy this process, God, as you're being the architect and designing the things in their lives. And so I pray just blessings upon blessings upon blessings over each and every woman listening to this episode, in Jesus' name. Amen. Well, thank you for listening to today's episode. It feels so good to be back in the saddle, and just, like I said, there are a lot of things that the Lord's been doing in my heart that I want to share during the season. So I'm excited for that. And we're just, the beauty of becoming. It's that whole process of him building us into that palace. It's just, brick by brick, beam by beam, wall by wall. And it really can be a beautiful process when we just submit with the Lord and just follow his lead. So thank you so much for listening. I will see you next time. Thanks for listening to the Beauty of Becoming podcast. If you've enjoyed today's conversation, hit the like button, subscribe to my YouTube channel, and select the bell icon so you're notified whenever new content is posted.